May the words of my mouth and the meditation of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O God, our Creator, Redeemer, and Sustainer. Amen. Every morning, I receive a word for the day. It comes by email from gratefulness.org. And the other day, it came from pioneering ecologist Rachel Carson. And it went this way: those who contemplate the beauty of the earth find reserves of strength that will endure as long as life lasts. In opposition to her perspective were the shocking images of smoke-filled orange skies over a good portion of Northern California, Oregon, and Southern Washington from the firestorms raging throughout the western United States. Friends of mine living in the San Francisco Bay Area posted pictures of a day without sun, an eerie nighttime darkness at 9 o'clock in the morning that resembled views of Mars more than planet Earth. It has a very end of the world feel to it. We who have the good fortune to live in beautiful Anacortes are well aware of the fragility of that beauty. The dangerous smoke-tainted air that we've been breathing lately is just one reminder of this. There's no question that the climate is warming up, resulting in extreme superstorms, fire, rain, snow, and a rising sea level. Back in 1962, Rachel Carson sounded the ecological alarm, which since then has been minimized, even ignored, due to denial, greed, and human hubris, all to our own detriment. So how are we to tap into those resources of strength that Rachel Carson spoke about when Earth's beauty is being burned and washed away? I want to go to the first lesson from today in Exodus 14. It tells the story of how the Israelites are just about to make it across the sea when Pharaoh's army catches up with them, only to end in a watery grave. This appears to be an act of God that seems unfairly brutal to those soldiers who were really just acting at their master's order. In fact, rabbis commented on the song of praise that comes after this, the Miriam song of praise that all these people, like chariot and rider, were drowned in the sea. These rabbis imagine God saying to the people, "My handiwork," that is the Egyptians, "are drowning in the sea, and you're reciting a song before me?" Clearly, the Israelites were not the only victims of Pharaoh's system of domination and violence. Now, we know that the Bible is not a collection of history or science books, so we look more deeply at the text and we ask questions of the text. So we ask it, what has this to do with God, this text that we're reading? Indeed, who is this God? Where is the loving God who we see in Jesus in the midst of this tale of suffering and violence? Well, underlying the Exodus story is the elemental battle between the forces of creation and chaos. Chaos is often represented in ancient tales by water. You think of the creation story, God separated the waters and created order in the chaos. A commentator on Luther Seminary's working preacher site notes that nothing less than cosmic order, the state in which life can flourish and abound, is at stake. And this Pharaoh's policies of enslavement, domination, and violence have been anti-creational, threatening God's fructifying promises to Israel and its descendants. It goes on to say, God's peaceable reign is not primarily an ethical ideal, but rather a byproduct of the Creator, beating back the ever-present, ever-threatening forces of chaos. So think of this as not just a spiritual truth. This is incarnational, in the flesh, real. Throughout human history, we have created or embraced the chaos that is indeed the antithesis of God's will for good. And I think what makes Rachel Carson able to see the beauty of the earth and even the smallest creature who may well be facing extinction, is a deep sense of the power of beauty, of the good, the power of God who brings order and wholeness, of God's shalom, which will ultimately have the final word. We have seen the power in this power in the resurrection of Jesus. His death was most certainly an ugly and brutal act of the forces of chaos working in the systems of domination and violence that are represented by Pharaoh and by Caesar. But even the seemingly all-powerful forces of empire were just no match for the power of God to bring forth life. As God has acted in the past, so God is acting in the present. Now, I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, and it wasn't exactly a place of beauty. The sidewalks were often cracked and uneven, and trees certainly did grow in Brooklyn, and they were often the cause of those cracked and uneven sidewalks. Garbage day made for a pretty stinky environment when walking to the store, to the subway, and in the summertime, the smells of garbage blended with sewer gas, bus and car exhaust, as well as a few other unsavory elements for a nasty, odoriferous ambiance. And of course, they were all those people rushing, always rushing, often on their way to nowhere in particular. I remember my mother and I would go visit my Aunt Jean in Staten Island. We'd take the ferry over on a Saturday, not a work day. And as the ferry was coming up to the dock, there was we see for our own ferries, there's always a boundary on the front of the ferry. And so the ferry attendant would be ready to open this as the thing bumped, and ferry drivers were a little rough. You kind of bounce back and forth. But at this gate, all the people were there waiting to rush off the ferry. Remember, this is a Saturday, and most of these people were visiting friends or didn't have any particular appointments. And my mother and I were right there, ready to rush off of the boat, up the gangplank, and into the street. That's just kind of the way it is. But in this environment, if one looked for them, there were always things of beauty. Maybe it was a neighbor's planting of red and yellow and pink roses, or a purplish blue crocus that sprang up in a snowy front yard, or new tender leaves forming an arch over our street. The beauty wasn't as obvious as it is for us here in Anacortes, but it was there for us to notice. And in noticing, that gave me the sense that the ugly streets, the poor and huddled masses living in crowded tenements, the tired, rushing workers, that did not constitute the whole of the world. Those small signs of beauty gave strength to meet the challenges of daily living with hope. The ugliness and the chaos of 9/11 hasn't faded in the years since 2001. The ELCA bishop of the Metro New York Synod, Stephen Bowman, was in his office just blocks away from the Twin Towers. He mobilized clergy all around the city to accompany the grieving families. He met and prayed with first responders at Ground Zero. And the ugliness certainly hasn't faded for Bishop Bowman, yet in his recent YouTube reflection on those traumatic days, he speaks of beauty in the midst of it all. He speaks of the beauty of human beings embodying the love of God by rushing into those doomed buildings in an attempt to save as many lives as possible, while knowing full well that they were giving up their own lives. He recognized the beautiful face of Jesus in the dirty, exhausted faces of firefighters, police, and others who just would not give up on the search for survivors and for the bodies of the dead in that smoking rubble. Recognizing the beauty of human love in service to others, Bishop Bowman and the rest of the chaplains, first responders, medical staff, and the whole people of New York, they found the reserves of strength that enabled them to endure those terrible days and all the days in all the years that have followed. In this hour, we are facing chaos, environmental and societal. In this hour, we can contemplate the beauty that's around us when we look to see it. It's in the wonders of nature. It's in the loving hearts and hands of our human siblings. It is in the powerful, unending, unconditional, creating presence of our living God who accompanies us, whose will is being done right here and now. In all these earthly and spiritual beauties, we do indeed find the reserves of strength that will endure, and then that will enable us to do our part in building up God's lovely, beloved kingdom. Remember, those who contemplate the beauty of the earth find reserves of strength that will endure as long as life lasts. Amen. And I commend to you to watch Bishop Bowman's message. I included the YouTube link, and I can guarantee you will find it very, very moving and inspirational. Thank you so much. God bless you all.